no one was forced to have the vaccination. Who made the comment? Was it Dr. Thurin?
Senator, I believe I made that comment.
You made that comment? Right. You were in Australia during COVID-19. You must have been fully aware that people, nurses, doctors, people to have their jobs, to keep their jobs, were forced to have the vaccination. Now, do you retract your statement that they were not forced?
Senator, no, I believe firmly that nobody was forced to have a vaccine. Mandates or vaccine requirements are determined by governments and health authorities. I believe everybody was offered an opportunity to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. I don't believe that anybody was forced to take a vaccine.
A lot of Australians will disagree with you on that one.
You have repeatedly refused to provide evidence. You've dodged questions on evidence from Senator Canavan and from Senator Rennick. You have relied instead on appeals to authority and other logical fallacies, including an appeal to authority. So let's talk about one of your experts. The health minister, the former health minister in this country, said, "We are engaged in the world's largest clinical vaccination trial." It's experimental in his view. He was the health minister that introduced these things. Let's go to my first question. What we've seen during the COVID mismanagement and malfeasance was the largest transfer of wealth in our nation's history, from we the people to big pharma via big government that lied repeatedly during the COVID mismanagement. My question is, did you ask the minister to introduce vaccine mandates for employment?
Senator, I reject the premise of your question.
Did you or did you not, did your company ask the minister to introduce vaccine mandates for employment?
Senator, I reject your question and your accusation. We had no involvement.
I made no accusation, Dr. Thakur. I asked you a question.
We have not been involved with any governments or any other organisations in relation to vaccine mandates. That is a matter for government. That is a matter for lawmakers. That is not a matter.
Did you ask the Health Department or one of their agencies for vaccine mandates?
Senator, I believe I've clearly communicated our position on that. Pfizer has no involvement, has no involvement in the imposition of vaccine mandates.
Did you ask anyone in or near a government or department to ban ivermectin?
Senator, Pfizer has had no involvement in relation to ivermectin.
Does the indemnity you have with the government extend to providing you with indemnity in the situation where an employee is forced by their employer to undergo vaccination and then experiences harm? And if you do have indemnity, I want the proof.
Senator, any indemnity agreements between Pfizer and the Australian government are confidential and we are not able to discuss that in this forum.
Why are they confidential? Because as a taxpayer, I paid for those injections even though I didn't take any. Why are they confidential from taxpayers? 26 million Australians.
Senator,
what are you hiding?
Senator, indemnity agreements between the Australian government and private organisations such as Pfizer are confidential. I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
Why are they confidential? The people who paid for these injections cannot see what they've actually bought. Why are they confidential? Why are you hiding?
Senator, those indemnity agreements, indeed contractual arrangements, as is always the case between the Australian government and external parties, are confidential. And I don't have any information today that might assist the committee in relation to that.
Did or does Pfizer have mandates for your own employees in Australia?
At the height of the pandemic and consistent with guidance from health authorities, from the New South Wales and Victorian governments, Pfizer did have a colleague vaccination program for its employees.
Do you still have it?
That vaccine, the requirement for colleague vaccination for Pfizer employees is currently present. We introduced a colleague vaccination program in the interest of protecting the health and safety of our colleagues and the communities in which we serve, in which we operate.
We've read that your vaccine mandate was using your own batch of vaccine, especially imported for Pfizer, which was not tested by the TGA. Is that correct?
Senator, so Pfizer undertook to import a batch of vaccine specifically for the employee vaccination program, and that was so that no vaccine would be taken from government stocks that was being delivered to clinics as needed.
Thank you. Did you enforce your mandate on your colleagues, your employees? Did you enforce it? Did you sack anyone or refuse to pay anyone who refused to take the injection?
Senator, we aligned with the public health guidance. We permitted accommodations or exemptions for people that had specific medical or religious reasons that they did not or could not be vaccinated. A small number of colleagues departed the company.
Thank you. Does your contract with the government for supply of COVID injections include a clause that negates your indemnity in the event of Pfizer committing a crime such as fraudulent treatment of trial data?
Senator, Pfizer always abides by all of the laws and regulations of the markets in which it operates. It abides by the highest standards for clinical trials and all its operations.
Does your contract with the government for supply of COVID injections include a clause that negates your indemnity in the event of Pfizer committing a crime such as fraudulent treatment of trial data? The question is simple. What is the answer? Yes or no?
Senator Roberts, as I had mentioned previously, the contents of Pfizer's contract with the Australian government remains confidential, and I don't have any information that I can provide to the committee in relation to that.
Is it true that Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines were developed initially as countermeasures for the American Department of Defence?
Senator, our sole focus from the start of this pandemic has been to discover, develop, and supply a safe and effective vaccine.
I didn't ask you about your focus. I asked you, is it true that Pfizer's COVID-19 injections, vaccines, were developed initially as countermeasures for the American Department of Defence, as experts have told? Is it true?
The vaccine was developed to address the dire global public health emergency that became rapidly apparent in the early part of 2020. That was the only reason for which the Pfizer vaccine was developed. We're very proud of the role that the Pfizer vaccine has demonstrated clearly in protecting the health of hundreds of millions of people around the world and enabling countries, borders and societies.
There you go again, another appeal to authority. Another appeal to consensus and appeal to numbers. That's not what I asked. Have you had any association during the development of these vaccines with the Department of Defence?
Just before you answer, sorry, Dr. Thur, just another question, follow-up question sure. After this answer. Yep. Yes, Doctor.
Senator, I have no information on that and I'm happy to take it on notice, but let me confirm again that the sole purpose of developing the vaccine was to protect global public health.
Isn't it true that many standard steps and procedures otherwise required before receiving approval for use were omitted or circumvented entirely to achieve this accelerated time period of development that you talked about, 12 months?
Senator, the evidence that was gathered and presented not just to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, but to regulators worldwide was thorough and comprehensive and was assessed by those regulators who made independent decisions on the benefit-risk profile of the vaccine.
I noticed repeatedly that you have transferred the accountability, the responsibility for these injections to the TGA. Repeatedly you've done that. Did Pfizer research the long-term effects and risk profile of its COVID-19 vaccine prior to release? Long-term.
Senator, again, as part of an application to any regulatory authority, the data that we gather and present are used to determine whether or not the regulatory authority feels that the medicinal product may be licensed and supplied to patients.
Again, you failed to answer my question. You're shifting responsibility to the TGA.